Dear online participants, liebe Teilnehmer hier im Saal, live aus der Hofburg mit Semmeln zum Semmelnar. Wir starten in die Saison 2025, 26. But we have English-speaking people here. Naomi? German as well? Ein bisschen. Okay, we will switch between German and English today because this seminar is also the international version of our seminars, which will start in approximately half an hour. Before this, we have a small season kickoff by Paul and Matthias. They will probably tell us some news about the Excel. Me, JT, Jan Thomas Fischer, I'm here today as your moderator throughout this first seminar. So if you have any questions and you would also like the online audience to be able to hear you, you have to come to the first row here where we have our microphones. And this is pretty much what's going to happen today. So grab your semmel, get ready, and we will listen to the opening words of the new president of the Austrian Association for Snow and Avalanches, and get the news for the new season, and then start into the seminar. Matthias and Paul.
Thank you, JP. I think we'll continue in English, in German for this part, and then afterwards for the presentation we will switch to English again. JP ist natürlich nicht nur unser Moderator, sondern auch unser wissenschaftlicher Beirat und ein wichtiges Glied weiterhin in der OEGSL. Das sieht man im Laufe dieser Präsentation, weil die OEGSL war nicht im Winterschlaf oder im Sommerschlaf in dem Fall. Kurz vorab, das wird die Präsentation sein, hat der JP schon erwähnt, zur Evolution and Future of Avalanche Education Training Programs in the US. Und jetzt geht es ein bisschen darum, was sich eigentlich getan hat während dieser Sommerphase, seit sozusagen der vergangene Präsident und Vizepräsident und der Sascha als Kassier den Vorstand verlassen hat und sich ein neuer Vorstand gebildet hat. Da ist natürlich immer die Frage, vor allem wir beide haben den Vorteil gehabt, dass wir schon sehr lange im Vorstand waren oder in den vergangenen Jahren schon im Vorstand waren und so ein bisschen mit dem alten Vorstand eine selbe Zielrichtung verfolgt haben und dieselben Ideen gehabt haben. Aber es ist natürlich auch wichtig, dass man sich am Anfang von so 2 Jahren intensiver Zusammenarbeit darüber austauscht, was eigentlich die Ziele sein, der OEGSL als Verein, was hat jeder für Vorstellungen. Und deswegen haben wir uns ein paar Tage getroffen zu einem Strategie-Meeting, so haben wir es geheißen, und so ein bisschen 3 Tage die Zeit genommen, zusammenzukommen und darüber zu philosophieren, in welche Richtung das wir gehen wollen, welche Projekte wir vielleicht priorisieren wollen und welche wir hinten anstellen wollen, weil man jongliert immer wieder mit Projektideen und man hat halt doch nur begrenzte Zeit, um das dann durchzuführen. Und deswegen war es, glaube ich, wichtig, dass wir es mal ausgetauscht haben und auch mal versucht haben, die alle miteinander irgendwo darzustellen und einzuteilen, was wir als nächstes eigentlich umsetzen wollen.
Genau. Und vor allem eben auch die Priorisierung dann, was geht sich mit unseren begrenzten Ressourcen aus und wo wollen wir in den nächsten 2 Jahren die Schwerpunkte setzen. Genau, so hat das Ganze dann am Ende ausgeschaut. Wir waren immer noch Freunde nach den 3 Tagen, haben super schöne Zeit gehabt, aber auch einiges weitergebracht. Und ein Teil, den wir beschlossen haben dort, ist, also es ist schon immer in unseren Statuten gestanden, dass wir ein unabhängiger und vor allem ein gemeinnütziger Verein sind. Und wir werden das jetzt wirklich eintragen lassen. Sollte dann den Vorteil haben, vor allem für unsere Unterstützer, die Partner, dass die das auch von der Steuer absetzen können als Spende. Also der Mitgliedsbeitrag muss vielleicht dann umgenannt werden in Spende, aber dann sollte das möglich sein, dass die Partner eben das steuerbegünstigt in ihrer Steuervereinbarung abrechnen können. Aber wir haben natürlich auch mehr zusammengebracht und nicht nur diese Sachen. wieder. Wir haben einmal definiert auch vor allem, was wirklich der Vorstand und was General Manager machen soll und was die Mitglieder machen. Und sind eben da zu folgendem Schluss gekommen. Also der Vorstand ist in erster Linie mal für die Repräsentation da, der OEGSL nach außen, und er sollte eben die Ziele und die Strategie entwickeln, sowohl wirtschaftliche, organisatorische, soziale und pädagogische Bereiche eben abdecken damit. Budgetplanung sollte auch der Vorstand machen, Liquiditätssteuerung und die Umsetzung dann. Wir sollten die Projekte einmal definieren, priorisieren und steuern, aber jetzt nicht selber umsetzen im Vorstand eigentlich. Die Organisation, Verteilung und Aufgaben und die Festlegung von Zuständigkeiten eben, dass wir schauen, dass die Sachen gemacht werden, aber nicht, dass jeder glaubt, dass wir müssen alles selber machen. Und natürlich auch alle Arten von Personalentscheidungen gegenüber dem Vorstand. Dann lasse ich den General Manager dir. Du hast ja Erfahrung, du weißt ja schon mal, was du kennst ja aus.
Und im Prinzip ist da ähnlich, dass viele von diesen Aufgabenbereichen ohnehin schon erfüllt worden sind, auch vom Chris, also Mailverwaltung, Mitglieder, Partnerverwaltung, Budgetkontrolle, auch die Organisation von Veranstaltungen, von den Vorstandssitzungen, Social-Media-Arbeit, Projektmanagement, auch mit Lavinistika, oder das ist ja meistens immer bei dir gelegen, Merchandising und IT- und Vereinsorganisation, aber es ist einfach einmal wichtig, dass diese grundlegenden Sachen irgendwo niedergeschrieben sein. Dann ist einfacher, dass man auch darauf verweisen kann, dass das sozusagen die Basis ist, und andere Sachen, was vielleicht oft schierer sein, einfach hinten umgestellt werden müssen. Das gilt eben auch für uns und genauso auch für die Definition der Aufgaben von Beiräten zum Beispiel. Die haben wir jetzt eigentlich neu ins Leben gerufen, oder? Diese Beiratfunktionen. Und da war am Anfang auch nicht wirklich klar, was haben die eigentlich für eine Funktion. Und das haben wir uns auch mal durchdenken gemäß und sind eigentlich zum Schluss gekommen, ja, Unterstützung und eine beratende Funktion von der Geschäftsführung, aber auch vom Vorstand und vor allem auch fachlicher Input und Expertise, vor allem weil auch eben gerade Christoph, Sascha, JP sehr stark vernetzt sein, auch international vernetzt sein, im Vergleich zu einem relativ jungen Vorstand, der was vielleicht die Beziehungen noch nicht so hat, was durchaus einen Vorteil hat, glaube ich, für einen Verein. Und mitwirken bei Veranstaltungen und Projekten, weil der JP das durchaus besser kann wie ich zum Beispiel. Mitglieder, und da liegt es eigentlich an eng, oder, dass ein Verein, das soll halt eigentlich so sein, dass sich jeder Teil vom Verein fühlt. Nicht aktiv oder passiv, sondern jeder eigentlich das Gefühl haben soll, dass wenn er eine Idee hat, dass er einen Verein herantragen kann, mit das als Projekt aufnehmen und nachher auch mit einfließen lassen, in was will man umsetzen und was will man nicht umsetzen. Und da komme ich eigentlich zu dem Punkt, dass wir uns auch überlegt haben, wie will man eigentlich Projekte abwickeln. Und da geht es auch darum, dass die Mitglieder eigentlich, und da sehe ich mir als Mitglied oder mir im Vorstand sind auch alles nur Mitglieder, dass wir alle mit Ideen kommen können, das vorschlagen können, die Projektidee einmal präsentieren können. Und danach haben wir ja bestimmte Leitlinien, die was wir als OEGSL folgen wollen. Und gegen die soll man Projekte einmal abwiegen, sind wir der Meinung, und sagen, okay, passt das jetzt eigentlich mit dieser Grundidee von der OEGSL und der Leitidee zusammen? Wenn ja, dann geht es wieder zurück an die Mitglieder. Dann wird entschieden, welche Projekte will man priorisieren, was will man eigentlich umsetzen und entscheiden nachher entsprechend. Dann geht es wieder zurück an den Vorstand, der was das irgendwo einrichten, organisieren muss, wie also quasi eine Arbeitsgruppe ins Leben rufen muss, dass das Projekt halt auch umgesetzt werden kann. Das, was nachher in der Arbeitsgruppe passiert. Und schlussendlich soll das Projekt nachher in alle halt im Vorstand oder alle im Verein wieder zugutekommen. Genau. Und um das zu priorisieren, weil ja eigentlich schon sehr viele Projekte jetzt in den letzten Jahren vor allem aus dem Vorstand herauskommen sein, aber eben auch aus den Ideen von den Mitgliederkreisen haben wir mal versucht, das irgendwie mal grafisch darzustellen und dann auch draufkommen, welche Ideen, sagen wir mal, vom Aufwand und Nutzen her dort sein, dass wir sie umsetzen können überhaupt.
Genau, also eher ein klassisches Diagramm mit Wirkung, Nutzen gegen den Aufwand aufgetragen. Haben mal geschaut, was machen wir aktuell, was haben wir noch in der Pipeline, was wollen wir machen und dann einmal geschaut, was können wir umsetzen mit unseren Ressourcen. Wir haben da einmal zwei Sachen raus, die für uns eben gut waren. Das ist die Infothek und das Jobportal, mal beispielsweise jetzt dann noch herausgenommen, wo sich eben etwas ändern wird, beziehungsweise was Neues gibt da. Weiß ich nicht, wie viele von euch regelmäßig wirklich auch auf die Homepage schauen, aber es gibt dort eben das Jobportal, eine Infothek und eine Publikationsspalte oder einen Bereich. Und da wird sich einiges ändern. Also das wird es in dieser Form so jetzt nicht mehr geben, haben wir beschlossen, weil der Nutzen nicht mit dem Aufwand übereingestimmt hat. Was wir weiterführen werden, ist, wir werden einen neuen Kalender aufsetzen oder es gibt ihn eigentlich schon. Er ist nur noch nicht so, dass man ihn jetzt automatisiert über den Button einbinden kann. Den könnt ihr euch abonnieren und wir werden schauen, dass der immer aktuell ist und dass da alle Schnee-Lawinenveranstaltungen, die für unsere Community in Österreich interessant sind, vor Ort sind. Das heißt, dass alle Veranstaltungen in Österreich, aber auch weltweite Veranstaltungen, die zum einen eine Reise wert sind, zum anderen vielleicht auch online übertragen werden. Aber falls euch natürlich irgendwas auffällt, also noch in der Testphase, wenn etwas nicht funktioniert, bitte gleich an die Info ein Mail schreiben. Und wenn ihr Veranstaltungen wisst, die da drinnen fehlen noch, auch sehr gerne ein Mail an die Info und uns dahingehend informieren, dass wir das noch aufnehmen können.
Und wenn es Jobangebote gibt, dann ist es natürlich weiterhin so, dass wir die gerne in so ein Newsletter wieder verteilen und das quasi an die Mitglieder auskommunizieren. Es gibt halt dieses Jobportal auf unserer Seite nicht mehr, weil es doch ein ziemlicher Aufwand war, das up-to-date zu halten, immer wieder unterschiedliche Seiten zu checken und man kommt einfach, ja, man wird dem eigentlich nicht gerecht, dass man das gut abbilden kann, was eigentlich wirklich dort angeboten wird. Genau.
Na, selbiges war eben auch mit Publikationen. Wir haben ja da versucht, nicht nur unsere eigenen eben in einer Infothek abzubilden, sondern auch alles, was sich so am wissenschaftlichen Sektor oder in der angewandten Forschung getan hat, eben bereitzustellen. Auch da ist unseres Erachtens der Aufwand in keiner Relation mehr gestanden zum Nutzen, weil eben die Besucherzahlen auf diesen Bereichen sehr gering waren. Und wir auch da gesagt haben, wenn es interessante Sachen gibt, teilen wir das sehr gerne über unsere Social-Media-Kanäle, über den Newsletter, aber wir haben diesen Bereich also auf der Homepage schon mal stillgelegt. Gut, OEGSL-Veranstaltungen. Wir haben einen bunten Reigen an Veranstaltungen wieder herausgesucht, was in dieser Wintersaison über die Bühne geht. In Blau dargestellt sind alle Semmelnare, das heißt, jeder erste Montag im Monat wird wieder bis Mai oder eigentlich bis April ein Seminar stattfinden. Wir haben einmal ein neues Format, kannst du vielleicht noch sagen, dann zum OEGSL Drop-In bei der Alpinmesse und sonst auch noch gewohnte Formate wie den Young Snow Science oder Young Snow Professionals Award, der im Februar wieder über die Bühne geht. Wir haben ein Schnöckseln, also einen Workshop wieder im Programm. Auch diesmal geht es über das Thema Snowpack, wo uns der Leo ein bisschen Einblick geben wird, wie man das Ganze aufsetzen und betreiben kann. Und im Mai dann eben wieder die Generalversammlung mit einem sehr interessanten Vortrag, der jetzt noch nicht fixiert ist, darum da auch noch nicht oben steht. Genau, vielleicht ganz kurz zum OEGSL Drop-In.
Ja, ich glaube, das ist ein Format, was noch nicht ganz hundertprozentig feststeht. Also es wird während der Alpinmesse stattfinden. Es geht darum, dass wir ganz gerne Saison-Kick-Off hätten, wo sich Organisationen oder Personen aus Organisationen austauschen über neue Entwicklungen, beispielsweise was sich bei den Lawinenberichten von den Lawinenwarndiensten verändert hat, aber vielleicht auch in Zukunft irgendwelche Kartenprodukte, die was in einer anderen Organisation entstanden worden sein, die was relevant werden für die kommende Wintersaison. Und da hätten wir gerne so ein Austauschformat gemacht, vor allem eben für Organisationen, die was eben auch in Ausbildungen als Multiplikatoren sozusagen tätig sein. Da wird es in den nächsten Wochen noch Informationen dazu geben. Es sind auch noch ein paar andere Sachen im Hintergrund, die was momentan so ein bisschen in der Planungs- oder Abklärphase sein, aber da werden wir uns auch noch darüber informieren, beziehungsweise eben in einem angesprochenen Kalender versuchen wir das alles up-to-date zu halten und die, was da jetzt stehen, sind dort eben auch eingetragen. Genau. Danke in dem Zusammenhang fürs BFW wiederum, für in dieser Saison zur Verfügungstellung vom Raum, aber auch die Verpflegung bei den Semmelnaren, Semmeln. Genau. Was auch natürlich bleibt, was ganz ein wichtiger Anker ist, genau, der YSB.
Der Young Snow Professional Award geht heuer wieder über die Bühne. Wir haben uns bei dem Strategie-Meeting dazu entschlossen, dass wir den nicht mehr jährlich ausführen würden, sondern wirklich nur mehr alle 2 Jahre das stattfindet. Das heißt, alle 2 Jahre werden Leute auserkoren, die dann auf die ISSW oder das Lawinensymposium dürfen. Wir haben letztes Jahr festgestellt, dass einfach für die kleineren Veranstaltungen zu wenige Einreichungen sind und es wahrscheinlich erreicht, wenn man alle 2 Jahre die besten Arbeiten in Österreich zu dem Thema Schnee und Lawinen eben prämiert und damit auch lockt, dass sie eben auf die ISSW oder Lawinensymposium dürfen und dass das zu wenig Content wahrscheinlich ist, dass man es jährlich stattfinden lässt. Genau, das heißt, die nächsten sind dann 2026. Im Heuer im Februar wird die Endrunde starten. Das heißt, die Besten kommen dann zum Semmelnar, dürfen ihre Vorträge hier halten und zusammen die Mitglieder oder die Anwesenden mit dem Konsortium, was eben noch nachher dort drüber schaut über die Vorträge, wird ausgelost, wer wohin darf. Gerne noch einmal auch eine Werbung machen in dieser Sache. Einreichschluss ist der 31.12. Bis dorthin eben könnt ihr einen Abstract bei uns einreichen. Wir werden den dann reviewen oder es wird ein Gremium geben, das den reviewt. Die besten 3, glaube ich, wieder werden eingeladen dann für das Seminar im Februar. Alle weiteren Informationen gern auf der Homepage abholen.
Ein Projekt, was eigentlich jetzt schon in der Finalisierungsphase ist, ist der Snow Profiler. Wir haben uns gedacht, dass wir zum Schneeraster eigentlich ganz gerne ein Profilbüchlein anbieten wollen würden. Und zwar ist die Idee daraus entstanden, dass viele Lawinenwarndienste ja ihre eigenen Schneeprofilbüchlein gedruckt haben. Meistens sind es eher kleineren Auflagen. Und dann haben wir gesagt, wir könnten die eigentlich alle zusammen machen. Und dann hat sich die OEGSL sozusagen auch angeboten, dass man das in diesem Rahmen machen könnte. Es waren nachher auch, das war letzte Wintersaison eine Anfrage von einer anderen Organisation, die was halt selber auch keine Profilbüchlein hat, mehr als Lawinenwarndienst zum Beispiel, die ihnen zur Verfügung stellen könnten oder verkaufen könnten. Und deswegen ist eigentlich die Idee geboren worden, dass man dieses Schneeprofilbüchlein, wie sagt man denn, customizen kann. Also dass quasi jede Organisation sich selber das Schneeprofilbüchlein nach dem Bedarf eigentlich zusammenstellen könnte und eine druckbare Version erstellen könnte. Und das ist jetzt mal ein ganz kurzer Einblick, wie das jetzt aktuell ausschaut. Also das ist einfach dieses typische Format vom Schneeprofilbüchlein, das ist der Leo Zoltan. Den kann man leider nicht hören. Er hat uns ein Video da gemacht, aber er ist der Vizepräsident, der was das eben programmiert hat. Was man da jetzt eigentlich sieht, ist dieses Formular, wo man sich eben die unterschiedlichen Seiten noch auswählen kann, was man gerne in das Schneeprofilbüchlein integrieren könnte. Auf der linken Seite oben seht ihr, da kann man ein Logo hinaufladen, das zeigt der Leo jetzt gleich. In dem Fall wählen wir das Logo von der OEGSL aus. Und als erstes kann man die ganzen verfügbaren Seiten da unten laden, damit man sich den in der Vorschauseite auf der rechten Seite anschauen kann. Und dann sind links eben diese ganzen Seiten dargestellt. Da, wo der Lehrer jetzt drauf gedruckt hat, kann man eben das Logo laden, dann kann man sich die Farbe aussuchen, je nachdem, wie man das gerne gestaltet hätte. Darunter kann man nachher auswählen, wie die Anleitung ausschauen soll, also wie das Schneeprofil angelegt werden soll, entweder mit einem Rutschblock hinten und 2 ECT vorne oder wie wir es beim Warndienst gerne haben, 2 ECTs und daneben eben das Handprofil. Und die kann dann weiter drunter dann weitere Seiten auswählen, wie zum Beispiel die Kornformen, das ist eben einmal das Cover. Für vorne in dem Fall, das wählt man da aus, damit das sozusagen im finalen PDF und druckt dann auch da ist. Das sind eben die Kornformen mit den Umwandlungsformen. Die Eingabe, da seht ihr schon, mit diesen relativ strukturierten Format, eben auch mit den Eintragen der verschiedenen Zahlen, ist das schon so gestaltet, dass man sozusagen das abfotografieren kann und hoffentlich dann zukünftig das automatisiert mit KI einlesen kann und sozusagen die Überschreibungsarbeit macht. Das war die Idee dahinter, wieso das so ausschaut. Genau, und dann gibt es noch die unterschiedlichen Tests, für was man sich einbinden lassen kann. Und hinten eben dann das letzte Blatt. Genau.
Wir werden vielleicht versuchen, dass wir das Video
Genau.
noch auf die Homepage stellen, als Erklärvideo. Der Leo hat sich viel angetan, aber leider, wir haben es technisch nicht hingekriegt, dass wir den Sound auch abzuspielen. Ja, da fehlen die Jungen, wir halten da. Genau, aber grundsätzlich auf der Homepage verfügbar, kann sich jeder zusammenstellen, dann wie er will, oder die Organisation zusammenstellen, wie sie das gern hätte, und sich damit ein druckfähiges Format ausgeben lassen. Ja, Lavinistika, magst du ganz kurz, Chris, oder so ein...
Kann ich gerne einspringen?
Ja.
Genau, also Lavinistika, wir haben es ja beim ASM schon erwähnt, dass eben das Projekt zu uns getragen worden ist. Und wir sind da mit der BEFSA, der Bulgarian Extreme Free Skiing Association, unterwegs. Ecosystem Europe ist auch ein Projektpartner. Und im Grunde genommen geht es darum, dass wir gemeinsam mit den bulgarischen Projektpartnern und mit unseren assoziierten Partnern, Snow Institute und Alpenverein, hier eben die Unterlagen zur Verfügung stellen und so ein Train-the-Trainer-Konzept auf die Beine stellen. Was gibt es für Lehrunterlagen? Vielleicht habt ihr es beim Snow Institute schon gesehen, aber diese coolen Card-Folder, ganz cool, sind viele Informationen drauf, das Wichtigste in Kürze. Das wird es jetzt auch in Bulgarisch geben und vor Ort dann verteilt werden. Unter anderem wurde das Snow Institute, die Website übersetzt. Und wir sind jetzt quasi gerade dran, noch ein Train-the-Trainer Konzept aufzustellen und dann mit dem Alpenverein mit großer Unterstützung mit dem Tom Wanner dann im Anfang Jänner durchzuführen, wo wir eben die bulgarischen Trainer einladen und dann ein paar coole Tage auf der Hütte haben werden. Das ist im Endeffekt im Großen und Ganzen unser Part dabei. Und genau, wir sind jetzt gerade in der Mitte, es läuft jetzt noch ein Jahr und recht spannend.
Danke. Wir müssen ja ein bisschen auf die Zeit schauen. Manche Sachen ändern sich auch nicht. Newsletter wird es also nach wie vor geben. Auch da immer natürlich, wenn ihr Sachen habt, die die Community wahnsinnig interessieren könnten, gerne Mail an die Info und wir schauen uns das dann an und tragen das, wenn es passt, gerne weiter. Und wie auch immer, ohne euch, die Mitglieder, ohne unsere Partner und Unterstützer könnten wir das Ganze nicht machen. Und an dieser Stelle noch einmal ganz herzlichen Dank an alle. Hat sich jetzt, glaube ich, nicht viel getan. Snowscan ist dazugekommen als Partner. Genau, seit 2025, also seit heuer der Saison, ein weiterer Partner im Netzwerk dabei. Gut. In diesem Sinne dürfen wir weiterleiten dann zum ersten Semmelnar dieser Saison. Und wir übergeben wieder an JD.
Thank you very much. Ja, vielen Dank. Unbelievably well organized. I've never seen that level of organization in this organization before. Good. Which brings us to the unordinary international. That's why we're meeting in the late afternoon, because we have guests from overseas. Jayson, do we already have you online?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfect, yes. So with this, I would like, very good. I give you a very short introduction and I pretty much hand over to you.
Mhm.
So with this, I would like to introduce Jayson Simons-Jones. Very good name. All right, cool name. And because this is the first seminar, and sometimes we do international steps, I just looked it up. You have to say, to see beyond your own nose, which is über den Tellerrand hinausschauen, which we try today with the topic of the evolution and future of Avalanche education training programs in the US. Jayson has been doing, I don't know, pretty much everything from mountain guiding, different avalanche programs, ski patrol, and professional and recreational avalanche courses. So Jayson is going to tell us a little bit about the avalanche education in the US. So if you hear the AAA, which is the American Avalanche Association, they certify different programs, and he's going to tell us how they organize everything, and which is a pretty interesting topic for us. And Jayson, please feel free to add up on my very brief introduction right here. And I hand over to you. And for everybody who's listening online, please use the chat or the raise hand function later on when we have a little bit of a discussion. Everybody who's here, as we said, we have the microphones here in the front, and we're going to moderate some questions later on. Jayson.
Excellent, thank you. I am honored to present here. Good to meet everybody. Guten Morgen from Colorado in the US. Can you see my screen presentation?
All
yes?
good.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will give a little bit of an overview of kind of the evolution of the avalanche education in the US. And I think to start, we have a very unique environment here in the US as to oversee education, as probably compared to other countries, the government involvement is very low here. So it's kind of the, the American mentality of less oversight and people figuring out on their own, which has created its own challenges for the American Avalanche Association to oversee, which hopefully I will share some of that stuff today. Yeah, quick, thank you for the intro. That was great. I appreciate it. A little lens about me. I'm a IFMJ mountain guide. I've been an avalanche professional for 20 years. I've led training programs for the guiding community through the American Mountain Guide Association, through some special forces training here in the US military, as well as throughout the avalanche sectors, forecasters, educators, ski patrol, things like that. My current role is as the rec program manager which is recreational level courses at the American Avalanche Association. I roughly oversee 152 individual education providers that service roughly 20,000 students annually in the US. This number's dropped a little bit in the last couple of years, but it's somewhere between 16 and 20,000 students a year that go through these programs. And I have a master's degree in organizational leadership as well. And my goal is to try to help align the industry through the purpose of more effective avalanche education programs. Real quick, a brief overview of what the US avalanche industry ecosystem really looks like in the US is it's all of these individual pieces. So we have control and mitigation professionals that are ski patrol, transportation corridors, mining. There's the forecasting section, which is both government funded avalanche centers as well as state funded avalanche centers, regional avalanche centers. Some are private forecasting centers. So there's not, even in there is different frameworks for how the forecast centers operate. There's research and technology going on, a lot of research through universities. There's the backcountry and recreation industry, which is both the guiding and the non-mechanized guiding, as well as just individual recreationalists. There's the education arm, which I'm going to talk specifically about. And then obviously the rescue and response as well, to search and rescue, law enforcement, private rescue companies, things like that. So these are all the individual pieces of the U.S. avalanche industry ecosystem. And A3, the American Avalanche Association, really sits at the middle as something that tries to gather all of this individual pieces of the community into one place and oversee it from there. So I will focus today on the education realm. Specifically, some of the arms at A3 is education and training, outreach and advocacy, professional development. Similar to what this presentation is, we're about to launch our regional snow and avalanche workshops throughout the Western US that we help fund, and then research, publications, things like that. So in the education and training realm, this is where there is individual curriculum providers, such as the American Institute for Avalanche Research and Education, the National Ski Patrol, the American Avalanche Institute, and then some private, smaller individual regional providers as well. So really the origins of avalanche education in the US, throughout the 70s to the 90s roughly, independent education was really offered regionally by ski patrols, guide services, avalanche forecast centers, nonprofit organizations that were attached to avalanche forecast centers. And really what the education was it was regional to communities and what people needed at that time and what professionals were available to basically share their knowledge and their expertise. The problem with that was there was no standard and there was no consistent curriculum or even language and terminology. So depending on where you lived in the US, what mountain community, who you had availability to learn from, really dictated what the training was. But because of that, and because of the size of the US, and the scale, there was a lot of discrepancy going on of what people were learning, which made it very hard to standardize, especially at the professional realm with avalanche workers. So it caused a lot of confusion amongst the public to understand the difference of what people were learning. And it also limited the growth and the professionalization of the industry, because if there was not shared standards, it just made it hard for everyone to get on the same page. And therefore that limited what the industry was really able to do professionally. A3 was founded to kind of help put all this in one place and get in the center of that ecosystem that I shared a little bit ago, that slide. So in 1986, the American Avalanche Association was founded by avalanche professionals to unify the avalanche community of practitioners, of researchers, and of educators, all in one place to kind of share a voice in a community. Initially, for a long time, the A3 was focused on professional membership. So it was an association to join, and that kind of validated your professionalism through the application process. And then it was really a place where up and coming research could be disseminated to professionals in the industry on what the cutting edge was in regards to practitioners and educators and what tools they could use. Over time, as this grew, it kind of fell on A3. The industry kind of chose this to become also the national body responsible for kind of setting these educational standards and trying to add some consistency to what people were being taught across the country. This shifted a little bit of A3's role from just sharing and disseminating knowledge to professionals to also overseeing some educational leadership. And it established some trust, and it's because of our neutral stance that allowed providers to support this, because we don't actually teach curriculum, we just set standards to oversee it. So therefore we're not, as best we can, we try not to be biased to specific types of curriculum delivery. The national framework push really started to happen in 2010 this was a 7-year process, similar to, we looked to the Canadians up north, as they, maybe similar to what is happening in Austria. They were more developed and had gone through the program, this process, this evolution, prior to the Americans, and had a more well-established professional avalanche worker community up there. So we looked to them. They had already split the professional and recreational tracks of education. So in 2010, that started to get explored here in the US. And through a lot of collaboration from the major curriculum providers in the US and A3 being in a position as like the governing body, we started to work on how to split recreation and professional education here in the US. So it was decided that A3 should facilitate this pro-rec split as the governing body, the center of the ecosystem, and also kind of a neutral organization. And so that was roughly a 7-year process here in the US. The goal of it was, with the pro-rec split, there could be a standardized course outcome and structure across a national framework that would be consistent amongst everybody that was teaching avalanche education under our umbrella. Therefore, it would align what people were learning, different regions, and add some consistency to people's education. Part of that, A3 was very focused on the professional split of that. It was also agreed that A3 would manage the recreational split at the time, but there wasn't really a lot of effort put into that. We're a fairly small organization. And so there wasn't a lot done until COVID happened here in the US, and there was an explosion of recreational level avalanche courses here. And the industry came to A3 and kind of pushed like, hey, we need somebody to oversee this consistency and alignment in the recreational education tract as much as the professional tract. So today, I am the first person to hold the seat of recreational program manager in the US at A3. As part of that initiative, I was hired in the fall of 2023 and really tasked with the role of trying to create some structure and oversight to the rec world, similar to what had been done at the professional level by A3 and the providers. The difference being the recreational world is much, much larger in the US. So today we accredit and oversee roughly 150 plus providers, pro and rec. They have an application program review process that they go through with us. We set national standards for what the proficiencies and guidelines are in the professional realm, as well as what the curriculum should be, the course delivery format in regards to field time versus classroom time versus online learning platforms, what instructor qualifications are, and making sure that people that are providing avalanche education are up to date on the industry's best practice for risk management. As people probably know, in the US, we're a very litigious society, so that's kind of a major important piece of the equation. We facilitate a lot of collaboration through multiple industry stakeholder working groups. So part of our role in overseeing avalanche education is really to try to work from the ground up and be the voice for the industry, where if we can collaborate with a lot of targeted work groups from different stakeholders, educators, ski patrol, forecasters, then we can see from a very high level what should be taught, how it should be taught, what's working, what's not working, and then try to set guidelines around that. We spend a lot of time communicating with this network, both through online, email communications, email newsletters, having webinars, lots of Zoom meetings, as well as this time of year, we have a lot of in-person events and sponsor a lot of snow and avalanche workshops, as well as try to get out with professionals throughout the season. Some lessons that have been learned along the way that I think are worth sharing. Really the biggest one that we have had to learn, and A3 has not gotten this perfect by any means, but really like to collaborate with the industry, we've had to build trust. And And the way you build trust is through trying to collaborate with the industry. And this is kind of like I see this very much as a cyclical process. And it really has taken a ton of just consistency in communication, a lot of time and a lot of effort of just having conversations and communicating, listening to what the industry wants, listening to what's important to the industry on the professional realm, as well as trying to understand what's working from a market standpoint with students, and really being a listening spot first before making decisions. This makes things quite slow. We have not gotten it perfect, but there's been a lot of efforts to try to rebuild trust, and collaborate along the way. And part of that really is the quality of what's happening with the collaboration should depend on systems that are in place and not people. And in the beginning, as a very grassroots effort, a lot of this stuff was relationship building because of personal trust and personal relationships. And that works great until people move on. And so therefore, there's been a big effort to try to build systems that can control this quality, and it's not hinged to individuals, to make it a more durable and scalable process throughout the years. As well, this industry is very dynamic. We have seen in the US, there took a lot of effort to professionalize what an Avalanche worker is. And post-COVID taught us like there was a massive recreational boom. A lot of people wanted to move into the backcountry because they couldn't go to the ski resorts as much. It also showed really quick that there was a market for some profitability by Avalanche education providers. So a lot of people stepped into the space because they saw it somewhat as a educational opportunity, but also a lot as a way to make money. And so the industry shifted really quickly. As well, here in the US, we have a very trying to embrace new user groups. So there's a lot more university programs happening now. There's a lot more grassroots level community programs happening. One big one is the motorized snowmobile community is massive in the US. And that's typically the biggest user group getting caught in avalanches these days. So we've had to learn how to move into that realm, which is very different than the ski touring community, where a lot of education has always been tilted towards. And so new vocabulary, new ways of teaching, new ways of learning, new ways of understanding how to work through the mountains and move through the mountains on a snow machine versus human powered. We've had to embrace that and learn from that community before we could start to act like we knew what was best for that community. So again, more collaboration, consistency, effort in making connections there, and then really being transparent with what we're trying to do and what our ultimate goal is, how we're trying to do it, and just sharing that with folks and making folks trust that like they can see, we share our impact. We're a membership-based organization. We share our impact, the amount of fundraising money we have, where it's going through the organization. We do this annually, what we're working on as an organization, what programs are growing, where impact is being made, and what's happening there. So we try to communicate to the community ahead of time where we're headed, so that they can understand what we're working on and be very transparent about it. Today, the way the US system works is there's a recreational tract of avalanche education, which starts in just an awareness, couple-hour presentation. Then there is a level 1 course, which is a 24-hour course, a rescue course, which is an 8-hour course. Either of those can be taken as the entry level. They're both required to move into the professional tract. And then there's also a level 2 course, which is a 24-hour course. Currently, and I'll talk about this a little bit when I get to the future. Currently, the level 2 course is not required to move into the professional tract of education. This was a decision made in 2017 with the split, and arguably this is one of the things that has not worked out great and is being currently revisited on why that wasn't required and how to make that better. for the professional track. On the professional level, there's the Pro 1 course, which is a 5-day pass-fail. There's the Pro 2 course, which is also that long and a pass-fail. There's the Pro Avalanche Search and Rescue course for professional avalanche rescue teams. And there is the Pro Instructor Training Workshop that A3 runs specifically to be leading pro courses. Instructors have to take our workshop first. What this system features is a standardized curriculum and delivery models. So it standardizes what people learn and makes a quite clear progression on what each course teaches and then what they will need to learn to move on to the next step in the process. It makes sure there's a consistency in delivery models. We have limits on how much can be delivered online or in a classroom versus field, and making sure that that is consistent as well. That there are very clear prerequisites of what needs to people need to prove to submit to get into the various courses and move on to the next one, as well as equivalencies between the tracks. This is where A3's accreditation process really matters. So in the recreational level, the program needs to be accredited by us to have a person's course recognized to be able to move on. And even professionals in the US need to start with a recreational level 1 and a rescue course. So if they don't take that from an accredited provider by us and they try to move on and apply to move into a Pro 1 course for their ski patrol job or guiding job, it won't be recognized. So that's where A3 really has tried to have some influence and some leverage on consistency around quality of programs by accrediting, especially in the recreation world, that folks are taking programs as well as a pro world under a consistent standard so they can move through this ecosystem. That's part of the problem in the US, or the challenge or the strength, depending on your perspective, around having 150 individual different providers, is that you could take a rescue course in Wyoming from one provider, and then you could move to Colorado to take your level 1 course. And then if those are both through accredited A3 providers, you could move to Montana to take a Pro 1 course. Then you could move out to Idaho to take your Pro 2 course, and so on and so on. And part of that is to also, from A3's realm of the accreditation, part of that motivation is to kind of capitalize on the strengths and the individual skills that different regions in the US have, as well as different snowpacks and different historical processes for how they work around avalanches. So in Colorado, we have a historically awful, dangerous, dry, shallow snowpack. Out in the maritime zones of Washington, Oregon, California, it's a much different snowpack. It's treated much differently from a professional standpoint as well. And so therefore, part of this accreditation process allows people to travel throughout the Western US and learn, as well as on the East Coast and some specific regions too, but to learn different tactics for managing snowpack, different types of snowpack from different types of professionals, and really allow someone to grow in their experience through that opportunity. So this is done, again, through a collaborative ecosystem, and to build that accreditation network has just taken a ton of meetings and time, and it's ongoing as well through reviews of these stakeholders, some audits to make sure this accreditation process is keeping to a standard. The recreational professional split, like I mentioned, it really clarifies what the goals and the learning outcomes are per courses. It allows course outcomes to match with user groups a little bit better. It reduces some confusion for students, employers, and land managers, and it better supports some scalable governance. So prior to this split, what we had in the US was we had a rescue course, a level 1 course, a level 2 course, and a level 3 course. And the level 3 course was really the only pass-fail course. But the problem we started to see was in a level 2 course, you might have aspiring professionals that needed to learn how to record snow profiles, that needed to learn how to run morning and evening meetings and really speak in the professional language of managing avalanches and snowpack observations, weather observations. But you also had advanced recreational users that didn't really care to learn that type of stuff. They just wanted to understand at a field level how to evaluate slopes on a daily basis, as opposed to forecasting basis that professionals do. And so it started to become really difficult in that realm to teach to two different learning groups in one course. And the professionals would try to move on to the level 3 course, but they might not have gotten as much training as they ideally needed to succeed at that course, because in their level 2, there was a lot of time spent with recreationalists also, and instructors had to teach to both groups. So that was really what that was what instigated the pro-rec split, was to better teach to these learning outcomes to the different user groups and make sure that they were getting targeted training and education based on what their ultimate goal is to be an advanced recreationalist in the field, making decisions on the daily, or to be more of a professional that had to forecast for what was happening in the snowpack. Different learners, different goals, but really one shared standard. And again, this happened in 2017, and we are now, 8 years into that and reevaluating. It's not perfect, and this is what we're trying to redesign again, is how to make this better and clarify these goals and learning outcomes with courses even better than we originally did. This is just a graphic from our website of what this structure looks like. You can start in the recreational track or the professional track. You can notice in the professional track there, it has the same entry-level courses. The big difference being the level 2 does not exist as a necessary requirement in the professional track. And so you have a jump from level 1 and rescue right to professional Avalanche 1 courses. And this is something, again, that we're realizing needs to be revisited currently in the US, and that there's a gap in people's skills, and that people are showing up to the professional tracks not quite as well prepared as they probably should be for that reason. A little bit about how this collaboration process happens in the US is, we work with these providers, we accredit them through review processes, we work with employers. So we have a lot of communication with ski patrol directors, snow safety directors, avalanche forecast centers, directors, highway forecasters, guide service owners, and lead guides. And then we talk to land managers here in the US, which is, we have a lot of government oversight in terms of how we use public lands. So Forest Service, Park Service, things like that. And then we try to also understand students' perspectives in the education realm. Surveying, are they getting the experiences they wanted? Are they getting the training they wanted? Trying to understand, is the training working? And really that this is like, again, a cyclical thing that goes back and forth, and A3's role is kind of in the center of it all to disseminate the communication and also centralize all of the communication through collaboration. So the information flows in both directions, and really like trying to understand who's accountable for making sure that the collaboration happens to sustain the success. Looking ahead here in the US, A3 currently is working on developing new courses, again, through collaboration with a lot of these providers, both in the pro and the rec realm. Like I alluded to earlier, there is a gap currently from the recreational track, the jump to the professional track, and trying to really better address how people can become more prepared along the way. More that involves probably more specialized training courses and more formalized education pathways. So trying to create more continuing education opportunities for both professionals and recreationalists, as well as making it much more clear what the formalized pathway should be. And if someone's moving from a level 1 to a pro 1, how can we fill that gap and make them better prepared? More formalized engagement with new user groups. Like I talked about, the motorized community is a big one. I work specifically these days with the International Snowmobile Manufacturers Association, as well as I personally run a group of 12 motorized professionals, both professional snowmobile riders, educators throughout the US, to kind of understand what's specific about that user group so that A3 can better design educational guidelines and help oversee curriculum that would better target the motorized user groups to help reduce avalanche accidents in that realm and understand the differences between a ski touring mindset and a motorized mindset. Currently, we're working on a much bigger public messaging campaign. This is something we have heard from the industry, part of this collaboration process, that the public really doesn't understand the differences between accredited A3 programs and non-accredited programs. They don't understand the differences between the learning outcomes in the courses, a level 1 versus a level 2 versus a pro 1. You know, why do I take a level 2 if I don't need it to get into a pro track course, things like that. As the growth has happened over the last 10, 15 years in the US, it's become quite clear that there needs to be a better public messaging campaign that is very consistent and captures the whole industry. And that really falls on A3 as the governing body to do. So we're currently building that to better project to the rest of the community and industry, and also just the public in the US to understand what avalanche education is. We're still continuing to refine how we do all this. It's always like a evolving process, and therefore things are changing, and we're trying to get better as we go all the time. Currently, you know, the way A3 operates, which might be a little bit different than other places, is we are a membership organization. We have around 4,000 members, and they pay annual dues, and then everything else is fundraised from us. So from partners in the industry, as well as grants and just general public donors, private donors, things like that, is what sustains the American Avalanche Association. So we get a little bit of government funding from the National Avalanche Center that we're attached to, but really it's a fundraising effort from us through partners in the avalanche industry and private donors as well. And then the membership dues also go a small way. Currently, with the state of the economy here in the US, it is a very challenging fundraising environment. A lot of people are pulling back from fundraising nonprofits as people are concerned about the economy here. And therefore, that's putting a little bit of a challenge on how we do all these things to look ahead and continue to grow when the finances and the economics are making it a little bit more difficult, unfortunately, for us. So really, in closing, I would just say that what I have learned, and I think what A3 has tried to embrace, is that avalanche education and is not just about snow. It's about culture and community, and really like building culture and community then just trickles down to how professionals work in the snow, and that we build shared standards, responsibility, collaboration, and trust through culture and community building, not necessarily through technical snow assessment skills. So thank you. And what I wanted to do is open it up to some questions or some discussion.
Jayson. Applause, very good. Everybody online, feel free to use the chat or use the raise hand, whatever function. Everybody in here, get prepared to have your own questions. Jayson, pretty cool. A lot of similarities, a lot of differences, as we kind of expected, but a very interesting track. My first question, just to help everybody here a little bit on board and to get everybody a little bit on the discussion track, terminology. Can you get us on board what you're talking about if you talk about industry? You know, like I think we have very different means, but when we talk about the snow industry or the avalanche industry, what is the industry you're talking about?
Yeah, so I think the avalanche industry in general in the US would capture professionals, so ski patrol, highway forecasters, mitigators, avalanche forecasters, guiding, educators. And so that's the professional realm of the industry. And that's, I would say, really what we would refer to. I think in the education realm of that, students will get swept into talking about the industry, but really we're focused more on the educators and the schools educating students.
So you're a little bit in the education industry in the sense of in between some kind of academic, but education track, if you talk about that kind of program. But if we talk about avalanches, how much would you include ski resorts and tourism within the snow and avalanche industry?
We really refer to it as who is working in the industry, I guess. So ski resorts for sure. A3 focuses a little more on like the ski patrol and the mitigation aspects of that with the ski resort, and not so much just with the ski visitor tourist. We're focused more on how that stuff's managed.
While everybody here is getting ready for the questions, I would like to follow up on the industry thing. How much are the training programs connected to other industries? So because like there's so many different tracks, like you're a mountain guide yourself. How much is your education program involved in other education programs? Like we know it from the Canadians, like level 2 is the entry level for the mountain guiding. Or if you talk about ski patrolling, are they still on their own education tracks, and how much like interaction is there?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We work with the American Mountain Guide Association in regards to prerequisites for the ski guide training tracks of what avalanche education courses they need to have. So like Pro 1, Pro 2 to be a certified ski guide in the US. Similarly, and this is where we have learned a little bit, when the Pro Rec split originally happened, the Pro 1 course was designed to capture professionals that were already working in the industry, such as ski patrol and guides and forecasters that had a couple years of experience, but really to formalize what their training was. What we learned and we're revisiting right now is what happened was the industry, the guide association, the ski patrols, the forecast centers embraced the Pro 1 training course as like an entry-level requirement for work. So all of a sudden, it wasn't people that are already working taking that course. It was people taking the course because they needed it to then get work in the industry. So if they wanted to course lead a recreational avalanche course, if they wanted to get a ski patrol job, they had to take that within their first 2 or 3 years as a ski patroller. To get into the guiding programs, they had to take it. So that wasn't the initial intention with the course. And so now we're currently revisiting what's taught, why it's taught, and hence, for example, why that level 2 is not required, and revisiting maybe why it should become required. So we've learned that the industry is actually leaned on our course structure as prerequisites. And that wasn't necessarily expected, and we're trying to embrace that.
Cool, thanks. Do we have any questions here in the room? Du kannst auch direkt bei dir.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Jason. Thanks for the presentation. I have actually 2 questions. The first one would be, you said that level 1 course, it would be like 24 hours. What would that mean? Is it like a 3 or 4 days course split up in various days or various weeks, or how does it look like when you do it?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. part of our guidelines around that are we really require it is a minimum of 24 hours of educational time. No more than 8 hours can happen outside of the field. So that means 16 hours of that course have to happen in the field on snow. How the 8 hours of non-field time happens, no more than 2 hours of that can happen, no more than 6 hours of that can happen through some type of online learning platform that people, can self-progress through. And we have these guidelines published on our website around this. At the same time, we've tried to keep it broad enough that people can offer that however best suits their market. So historically, that's been a 3-day course, like you talked about. And prior to COVID, it used to be like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days in a row. And it was a mix of field and classroom time. COVID made the online learning kind of be developed, where now a lot of people will go through 8 hours of online learning, with 2 hours of that has to be interactive. So even on Zoom with an instructor kind of teaching stuff. And then there's 2 field days back to back. We do accredit some university programs that offer it stretched out through an entire semester, which is also okay. So it's designed to create a minimum standard, but to allow individual providers to capture the local market that they need through whatever format, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes much more sense now. Yeah, thanks. I have another question, if I can, regarding the education materials. Do you also provide like slides, handouts, whatever?
No, and really what we have tried to do, and this is part of the American, capitalist mentality, is the industry really didn't want that. They wanted someone to oversee consistency and standards, but they didn't want to be told how to teach necessarily. So part of our review process is our guidelines state per course what needs to be taught, but then it's on people to develop that material themselves or the organizations to develop how they want to address teaching that. And then that's what they will submit to us, their unique curriculum on how they address what should be taught. And we review that to accredit it or not. And it's a tricky system in the US. That's why we have 152 individual providers. Some of those, like Erie, for example, they have 114 of those that all teach their curriculum, for example. And so we try to allow people to create a unique marketing brand or business opportunity while also staying consistent and standard. And that's somewhat the US economic mentality.
Maybe
my job would be a lot easier if there was just kind of one curriculum that we administered, but that's not how the US is unfortunately set.
Maybe directly following on this, what is a provider? Is a provider, can it be an individuum that is a mountain guide? Do you need to have a ski school? Do you need to, I don't know, have a certain company kind of allowance, or what liability issues?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So yeah, any of you could admit to apply to be a provider of education. There's 4 things that you need to submit. One would be, the first one is a land use permit in the US. So the way you get a permit in the US to use public land, unlike in Europe where certification doesn't matter. So you can be a full mountain guide in the US and it doesn't actually matter. You need to work for a company that has a land permit. And the way you get a land permit is you have to submit a business operation plan, and show that you have liability insurance. to the land agency. So it might be the U.S. Forest Service or the National Park Service. So that's the first realm. And then, so by submitting that to us, it proves that you actually have a business and you've gotten insurance, and then you submit your curriculum to us that meets our standards that we review. You submit your organization or operational risk management plan and practices. We review that to make sure it's actually best practice. We review your instructor list to make sure people teaching, or if it's just one person, is qualified to teach. And so it's those four things that someone would need to submit. So a provider, a lot are guide services, universities, ski patrols that have that business structure in place, but there's also a lot of individuals that might teach, 6 or 8 Avalanche courses in their region a year and have gone through that process to get a business license, to get a liability insurance, build their own curriculum, and do all those things as well too.
Cool, thanks. Do we have more questions? We had one back there. Felix, can you come to some kind of microphone? Maybe introduce yourself really quickly.
Yeah, well, my name is Felix. My initial question has somehow been answered. It was mostly about what those providers have to fulfill to become certified by you. How do you make sure, maybe this goes in the direction of quality control, how do you make sure that these providers actually stand up to your standards over time, firstly, and secondly, what are the topics how do you make sure that the topics are fulfilled that they have to provide in a level 1 or level 2 course?
That's an excellent question, Felix, and that's what we're grappling with right now. So again, my role being new and needed, and I was hired in 2023, and to be quite direct, I probably should have been hired in like 2010, or not me, but somebody. So we're late to the game, but we're slowly taking charge. And so the review application process has been redesigned and made much more robust. And currently right now, the biggest thing that we're trying to solve is exactly what you said, how to make sure once people are in the network that they are continuing to abide by it. So some things that we're exploring is we make people reapply every 5 years with their materials and especially in regards to risk management and curriculum, like things change. And so there might be new things taught 5 years from now. And are they staying updated with that and staying current? Do they still have a business license? Are they still functioning? So every 5 years, they need to reapply. We're currently trying to figure out right now how to go into the field in the winter season and audit programs. So to be able to check and make sure people are actually doing this stuff. And the problem we have right now is with 150 providers, 20,000 students, this is like pushing 3,000 courses a year that are offered. We don't have enough people to really be everywhere at once. So trying to figure out how to target those. And a lot of it right now comes from complaints. So if we get a call or an email that an individual provider is not meeting the hours or they're not teaching what should be taught, and we hear a complaint, then we'll target that organization to go check on in the field. But this is our challenge for sure, is to make sure. It's always been an honor system amongst the industry, but with the growth, it's been hard to keep that consistent.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thanks for the answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Felix. Do we have more questions here in the room or maybe online? Do we have anything in the chat? I don't know.
Hi, Paul. Just a short one. Is it possible to switch between the programs, so the US and the Canadian one? or are they not that consistent?
We're working on that right now. That's a good question. Currently in the US, Canadian education is recognized. But it's not necessarily the same vice versa. So, and really what's trying to be figured out is that isn't like an employer situation. So in the US, if you go to work for a guiding company or a ski patrol and you say, I have my Canadian ops level 2, they will recognize that. The Canadians necessarily might not recognize an American level 2. The pro realm is a little bit, that's getting closer. So a pro 1 or a pro 2, but the Canadian system's a little more robust. And so depending on what level of employment you're going for through each country will determine if it's accepted or not. But there is not currently a blanket uniform standard. We're trying to figure that out.
We don't even have a national standard.
Yeah.
Or we have too many. That's a different thing. You know, either you have too many or you don't have one. We probably have too many. I correct myself. Then the question with the acceptance through the courses is really interesting because now I think you call it the environment of the courses is solely focused on after and technical skills or the recreational skills. The Canadian universe, if you have an environment, they have universe because they have all the meteorology, risk management, avalanche mapping. Are these bits and pieces part of this environment universe, or do you have to get them somewhere else? Do you plan to extend? How does this compare?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's part of the environment in the US, but a lot of those are not like required courses. So like mountain meteorology or weather forecasting, you can take, there are various opportunities to take those courses, and we will offer marketing for those or like opportunities, but it's not a requirement to be a part of the course. Therefore, a lot of people will do that type of stuff to be successful when they take their professional level 2, for example, because it's pass fail. And if they took a meteorology mountain weather forecast course from the local university, that might make it easier for them to pass. That's exactly what we're exploring in the US right now, is how to offer more targeted, shorter education courses to build into the process that are more valuable. And the whole point would be to make sure there's consistency in what those courses are delivering. So similar to the Canadians, we are trying to build into that process.
Thanks. Do we have any questions in here or online?
So not online.
Cool. We already one up. Matthias, you have one? Yeah, there's space for one tiny little extra question, Matthias. You want one? Or you're fine? Cool. Then I would like to very much thank you, Jayson, for visiting us today for the kickoff of the season of the Austrian Association for Snow and Avalanche Semmelnar. It's been a pleasure to have you here. We have, I'm not even in the picture, I see. Change that. Okay. We have this special mug, which I don't have in my hand right now, but there's only one way to get this mug. And you can only get the mug if you present at a seminar. You know, and there's, so especially not in Europe, beyond Austria, it's very rare. On the North American continent, it's super rare. So if you have one of these mugs, you can really show off at your next course. We are not sending it. You either pick it up here, or we probably meet you next year at the ISSW in Whistler, I guess.
That sounds like a great deal. I might be in Innsbruck this spring, maybe with some ski guiding.
Oh, that's perfect.
I will let you know, but I appreciate that. It's been an honor.
So the mark is either waiting here for you, or we bring it over next year, or send it with someone that is visiting. And yes, once more, give a hand to Jayson.
Thank you all. If anybody has any questions, I know that like it seems like in Austria you're going through a similar process to what we have gone through in America in terms of growth and figuring out standardization. So you can always reach me at jason@avalanche.org through the A3, and like I'm always happy to answer questions and be a resource.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. And for everybody else, there's another seminar coming up next month, which is happening in Salzburg. And it's about a big avalanche accident, which is already 25 years ago. And who doesn't know what to do next weekend, come with pretty much all of us to Graz, because next weekend there's the Lawinen Symposium in Graz, which is a prime location to meet all of your avalanche friends and get some avalanche education and what's going on in the avalanche world. Thanks, Jayson.
Thank
See
you
you
all.
next spring or at the ISSW. Thank you so much.